We've had a very busy day of NHL news. Tonight we're taking a look at some trade rumors involving some Pittsburgh Penguins and the Calgary Flames. We're going to recap what went down in Ottawa today. A big punishment was laid down for a botched trade regarding Evgeny Dadonov, and Pierre Dorion ended up being let go. We also had a lot of comments from Michael Andlauer, which we're going to discuss. We have another retirement in Paul Stastny, waivers news, a signing in Edmonton, news on a potential World Cup in 2025, and Nicholas Backstrom stepping away from the Capitals for at least a little while. We'll discuss all that coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, it's been an extremely busy news day. The Senators once again dominating the news headlines in the NHL world. Of course, just a recap in case you missed it earlier. I do have a couple of videos on the channel, so I'm not going to go into as in-depth as I did earlier, but essentially today the NHL handed down a severe punishment to the Senators, making them forfeit a first-round selection because of the, I guess you can call it negligence regarding the Evgeny Dadonov trade back in 2021 with the Vegas Golden Knights. It was been confirmed that the Golden Knights were told that he did not have a modified no-trade clause, but he indeed did. Well, it wasn't that he didn't have the clause, but he never submitted his list in time, so that the clause was voided, I believe is what was relayed. But that was not the case. And then, of course, they later tried to trade him to Anaheim, and, of course, that got blocked because of the clause that was actually in effect, and it just became a whole big mess. And they essentially, after investigating, found that Pierre Dorion was at fault here. So he's been fired, or I guess allowed to resign, whatever you want to call it, mutual parting ways. Basically been fired by the Ottawa Senators and owner Michael Andlauer and new president Steve Staios. So, of course, as we know, Staios is the interim general manager right now while covering the president role. They'll determine here in the near future, I guess, who's going to be the new general manager. Sounds like Michael Andlauer does want like a two-headed, approach to run the operation. But Michael Andlauer made a lot of comments as well about being unhappy with how this was handled and how long it took. He was led to believe during the buying process of this team that it wasn't going to be a big deal. He said the sellers told him that this wasn't going to amount to anything, nothing to be concerned about. He doesn't understand why the league took so long, like a year and a half, to to investigate and do all this to finally, hand down a punishment. Like he thought this should have been taken care of long before he ever bought the team. He made comments about Shea and Pinto and the suspension. And again, he was upset with the league and how they knew for quite a few weeks that they were investigating him before they ever relayed that information on to the Senators. Like, why were they not told? That really would have impacted contract negotiations. So, obviously, he let the league have it. I wouldn't be shocked if Andlauer ends up with a fine out of this, because he had some not so good things to say about how things were handled, and I don't blame him one bit. I mean, at the end of the day, like, they're talking about how the Sens are being punished for, you could say omitting information, negligence, but isn't it the same thing? We're not telling him about these things when he's spending almost $1 billion on a sale. Like, I would think he'd have grounds to sue the NHL if he really wanted to, for not being told about some of the stuff. Now, the Pinto stuff is different. That came up after the fact, but still, that investigation probably even came up before he was owner, and only found out afterwards. So he even made a comment that maybe they didn't want me to know to make sure they get as good a sale price as possible. Like, I mean, he was really just slamming the remarks today. So it's been quite a news-dominating day. We'll see how the Sens respond to this. Obviously, I know the coaching staff is safe for the time being, but ultimately, their biggest supporter and the guy who hired them, Pierre Dorion's gone now, so it's difficult to say how long their future is. A lot of that's going to be dictated by wins. Keep winning, keep your job. If you don't, then they'll replace you. It's just that simple. They want to be best in class, and a lot of people just don't have the confidence that Dorion and Smith are the guys to lead this team to a potential Stanley Cup one day. So if they're not the guys, then replace them. Ownership's always wanting to have their own people in there. So it's been quite an eventful day in that regard. Other news around the league: Erne cleared waivers for the Edmonton Oilers, so he's been assigned to Bakersfield, and then they officially signed Sam Gagner to an NHL contract, who had been signed to an AHL deal only, but he signs a one-year deal at league minimum $775 for the remainder of the season. So he'll take Erne's spot on the roster. Longtime NHLer Paul Stastny has announced his retirement after 17 long seasons. Stastny was another real solid pro, had a real solid career. Obviously, started with the Avalanche, played a long time in St. Louis, had a couple of stops in Winnipeg, played for Vegas, Carolina, bounced around the league quite a bit, but ultimately was a real solid hockey player. Never really a guy that was reached superstar status, but he got into the league at a young age and really had made a solid career coming after in the footsteps of his dad. Of course, who had a long, solid career in the NHL as well. This year, he didn't end up getting signed in the offseason and wasn't believed that he really wanted to go to camp on a PTO. So, at the end of the day, he called it a career. So, congrats to Paul Stastny on a long, solid career and wish him the best or whatever comes next for him. Recently retired NHL vet Joe Thornton is going to be joining Calgary Flames assistant GM Brad Pascal as co-managers for Team Canada's entry into the Spengler Cup. So obviously, Joe did not take long after becoming officially retired and part of the alumni into getting another opportunity. So be curious to see how Thornton makes out in his first run there. Obviously, we've seen guys like Shane Doan kind of start there as well. And eventually, I'm sure Joe will have probably a more official role in the NHL as well. A couple of other things around the NHL. NHL veteran of 11 years, Nathan Beaulieu, who also went to camp on a PTO and not able to be signed, has now ended up playing over in the Swiss League. So Nathan Beaulieu signs a one-year deal in the Swiss League. So that's good for him to continue his career. I imagine his time in the NHL is probably done. Longtime veteran Nicholas Backstrom of the Washington Capitals is stepping away from the team. Of course, we know a couple years back he had a hip resurfacing surgery, which is a major deal, and a lot of players don't really come back and are not the same. It's a really big deal. And I know Backstrom was reportedly going into camp this year feeling the best he had in a while, but after playing for a bit, it just, you could tell watching him, he's not the same player. Not really having a whole lot of success when it comes to the production. He did put out a statement as well as the team. Basically, he says that he's giving his ongoing injury situation, that he decided to take some time and step away from the game. This is a difficult decision, but one I feel is right for my health and for his family. So at this time, so he asked for privacy. And obviously not really clear how long he's going to be away. The team also put out a statement basically saying that they're going to give him his full support throughout the entire process. And to clarify, he is not retiring, but he is stepping away for an undetermined, indefinite period of time. So we don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, it could lead to retirement. That would not be shocking. It's a big deal. He's had a lot of, major surgery, and it's just not responding the way he was hoping. So we'll see what happens. For now, he would be an option by the looks of things to go on long-term injury reserve if they need him for cap purposes to be able to do that. So we'll see. A couple of interesting notes on tonight's games. Avalanche are healthy scratching Jonathan Drouin and Tomas Tatar. Drouin started on the top line in the beginning of the year, worked his way down the lineup after not getting the job done, and is now a healthy scratch. Tatar also has a few assists on the season, but has yet to score for Colorado. Although he tends to take a while to warm up to coaches. He's bounced around a lot, and word is that even though he's kind of considered like an analytics darling, that he kind of drives coaches a little bit crazy. And of course, we'll see. I'm not sure how things are working out between him and Jared Bednar, but certainly they haven't seen enough to keep him in the lineup. So a couple of offseason signings there for the Avalanche not really working out so far. Obviously, Drouin's deal is a little bit more team-friendly than Tatar's, but be curious to see if they can get back in the lineup and if they can get things going, because that's they're going to need those guys. It's an unfortunate situation that neither one of them has really been producing for Colorado. So there'll be a healthy scratch tonight. The Boston Bruins today placed defenseman Matt Grzelcyk on the LTIR. We talked about his injury yesterday, that he's going to be out for a while. It said multiple weeks, but wasn't sure how long. Clearly, they're confident it's going to be at least a month. So LTIR, he goes. They called up Mason Lohrei. So that's, I think they also called up Ian Mitchell, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Sam Bennett came back for the Panthers, and he's already out again. He already suffered another fairly serious injury. It's an ankle injury by the looks of it. They're calling it lower body, but I believe by the looks of it, probably ankle. And they're saying it's not day-to-day. It's more serious than that. but they're not really putting an exact time frame on it. They said originally they feared it was worse than what it turned out to be, but I would say it's still quite possible. Wouldn't be shocking to see him miss at least a couple of weeks. It didn't look pretty. I'm thinking he might have dodged a bullet if they're saying it's not as serious as originally thought. The other news today came from Kevin Weeks of ESPN and NHL Network, talking about ongoing discussions between different parties to hold what he's calling a kind of scaled down version of the World Cup in 2025. We know the NHL and their players really want an international best on best, and they've been pushing to get this World Cup to be something that happens. Of course, it got delayed mainly because they wanted ideally to have a Russian team in the mix in the tournament, and because of the conflict and the war going on in Ukraine, they didn't really feel comfortable doing that, so they weren't sure what to do. But now Weeks is saying that it's going to be kind of I don't want to call it watered down, because the best talent in the world, in my opinion, does play in the NHL, but it'd be an NHL player-only tournament, so you wouldn't see players coming from Europe. See, the part of this that makes it challenging as well is that European leagues don't necessarily want to shut down or loan their players out for these types of things, right? So that makes it hard. So if they go with NHL-only players and the league can shut down for a couple of weeks, it'd probably be sometime between the Super Bowl and March Madness. So you're probably looking at, maybe a mid to late February or something to that effect. Most likely with what we'd see, but it could be. I'm not sure how many countries there would be. I don't know. Would they do a Russian country? I mean, I don't know. Maybe they'd let them, at the very least, let them compete, but because they've done that in the Olympics before, but they weren't allowed to call it competing for their country. They were like the unified country. I can't remember what they called it, but anyways, we'll see what they do, because without those athletes, it's just not going to be a true best on best. I understand because of the war and all that. I support what's going on and why they're kind of not letting those people and athletes compete, but it's hard to say that it's a true best on best without it. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Either way, I'd just like to see a tournament take place, which is ultimately the main objective here. Now, some trade rumors for today. The Calgary Flames, like I said, could be very much heading for a major retool. Eric Francis and some other Calgary media were making their rounds on a lot of different shows today. Francis basically saying that everything's on hold, and it wouldn't be shocked to see a major retool take place in the next, even get started here soon, depending on how things go. I don't think Craig Conroy, the new GM, is ready to hit the panic button and make a trade like tomorrow, but at the same time, where they're not comfortable signing any UFAs anymore. So, Elias Lindholm, Noah Hannafin, Zadorov, Tanev, Vladar, they're all very much possibly on the trade block again. Obviously, we'll see what they do. They're playing Dallas tonight. They did have a early 1-0 lead. That's where, when I started to record this video, where things stood near the late in the first period. So I don't know where things stand now. Maybe Dallas has come back while I'm recording here, but they're at a spot, and they got to get things turned around in a hurry. If you don't see a major 3 to 5 game at least win streak in the next little bit, I would not be shocked by Thanksgiving if you're starting to see this retool get started. There's teams that were very interested in Noah Hannafin. There's definitely lots of interest in Elias Lindholm. So there's no doubt they'd be able to unload some of these guys. It's just a matter of if they're happy with the return or what have you. So we'll see. And in Pittsburgh, they're off to a bad start. Obviously acquiring Erik Karlsson, they had higher expectations. I know myself, I said, I love Erik Karlsson. I've been a huge fan of his. I think he's one of the greatest players ever. But he's not really what Pittsburgh needed. And we've seen him and Burns not be able to coexist in San Jose. Why did they think him and Letang would be able to coexist in Pittsburgh and still both have great, production? This seemed to me like a pipe dream. But Kyle Dubas thought that's what the team needed. Ultimately, I understand you have an opportunity to acquire a star player like that, how tempting it is. And really, at the end of the day, did they give up a lot to do it? Not as much as you'd think, right? But is he going to duplicate that 100-point season? It's probably unlikely. I mean, the Penguins, as we stand now, are 3-6. Power play doesn't look good. They look disjointed. Frustration's building in. I think that the window is slowly closing on this group. I mean, they re-signed to a fairly long-term deal, an inconsistent goalie. Tristan Jarry's already had some nights now where you just shake your head and say, what were they thinking? I mean, at times he's good, but the inconsistency is terrible. The power play, like I said, you would think with the amount of talent they can put on the power play, it'd be amazing. and it hasn't been. So again, the Penguins could be in a situation where Dubas is going to be giving a little bit more rope here, where he's first year and obviously tried to create a situation for this core group to have an opportunity to win again. And if he can't do it, he'll be getting likely every opportunity to tear it down and kind of go through a retool or a rebuild here. But, I've seen some articles today suggesting they could even look at some of their division rivals, like the Jackets or the Flyers. I mean, the Flyers have made it known they have lots of wiggle room with LTIR. They're willing to take bad contracts or unfavorable ones if you're willing to make it worth their while. And, one player I know that the Penguins, and I think a lot of their fans would like to see moved, would be Jeff Carter. Now, he does have some protection in that contract. He may not want to go back to Philly where he started his career. That's just an example. But, moving a guy like Carter is something that would be a good start. But, again, they need him to play ball. Obviously, some other guys, Pierre-Olivier Joseph is certainly available. Ty Smith could be made available. Will Butcher could be made available. There's definitely like to shake up the bottom six in the forward group and the third pair in the decor for sure. At the very least, I've seen Jeff Carter in some of their games have been playing fourth line. Clearly, it's a case where they'd like to move that, but at the end of the day, it's challenging. So we'll see. But Calgary and Pittsburgh are two teams that have been off to rough starts, so the room wheel's going to be turning on them. And I know if they don't get things turned around quick, there are two teams we could see be active here to try to salvage their seasons or to kind of kick off a rebuild. I don't think Dubas would take the Penguins into a deep rebuild by any means. I think with that core group there, I think he would try to retool a bit to try to see if that team could still open a window to win. I'm not convinced that that's really possible with that group as is. But you never know. One player they have to make a decision on is Jake Gensel. And he's a real good player, proven goal scorer. But if they aren't convinced, for example, in another, 10 games that they can win with this group, do they really want to sign another player long-term, or do they want to use him because he'd have good value? Maybe they can make a move to, make the blue line better or to get some more depth or something. It's hard to say what they would do, but, would they do something like that? It's hard to say, but going to be two of the more interesting teams to watch for sure here down the stretch, and we'll see what happens. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news. Give me some thoughts on who the next GM of the Senators might be, your thoughts on the World Cup, your thoughts on the obviously the trade rumors that we discussed here today as well, and all the other news. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.